Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm TJ of TJ's Magic Touch, and in today's video I will be showing you how to create gradient text in two different ways while using Photoshop. Both of the techniques that I will be showing today are fairly easy since they are pre-built techniques right into the Photoshop workspace. There are manual ways to create gradient text, but I think I will save that for a later video since the techniques are a little bit more advanced and aren't so beginner friendly. If this is your first time or one of your first times opening up Photoshop, this is the screen that you will see. This is where you can find Photoshop step-by-step tutorials. This is where you can find your previous work. You can store Lightroom photos if you are into photo editing, as well as all of your documents that are in the cloud. For this tutorial, I'm just going to work on an 11 by 8.5, which is a standard size sheet of paper, since I am showing you a technique and not how to design a template from scratch. Once you have your preset details set up, you'll click create. Now the first thing that I am going to do, which is a step you can skip, is I will change my workspace so that it matches yours at home. So I will go to Window, Workspace, and Essentials Default. If you have Essentials Default set up and it looks a little bit different than what I have, you can go to Window, Workspace, and Reset Essentials. This should give you the exact same screen that I am working with right now. Now that we have our workspace set up the way that we needed to in order to work cohesively and together, I am going to click on the text tool, which is the capital T inside of your toolbar, and I'm going to keep the text set to horizontal. Then I'm going to choose the text that I'm going to use for this tutorial. I want to find a text that is thick enough so that you can see the gradient effect all through this tutorial. Once I have the text selected, I am going to then click on my move tool in order to move the text about the screen. Now that I have my text where I want it to be, I'm going to make sure that my text layer is selected, and I'm going to click on the FX button at the bottom of the screen and select Gradient Overlay. This pops up your layer style workspace. Inside of it, you'll see all of the descriptions for gradient text. Here you'll see linear, which shows you straight, left and right. You'll see radial, you'll see angle, which puts your gradient at an angle. You'll see reflected, as well as diamond. You can apply any of those effects plus change the opacity, scale it up and down. You'll see pretty much any of those effects in this box. If you are interested in changing the colors, Photoshop gives you a ton of preset colors under the gradient editor. So you can use anything that they have preset, or you can use your own colors. You'll notice that some of the gradient effects have 2 stops on them and some of them have 3. The gradient effects that have 3 stops on them, similar to this one here, there's 3 colors that will show up in your gradient. For your gradients, you can add as few or as much or as many stops as you like to create the effect that you want to create. If there is a preset design such as this one that you like, but you'd like to change one of the colors, you can scale one of the stops, which is this little square. You can scale it up and down so that you can have as much purple or as much pink as you'd like in your gradient. You'll notice to the right hand side in layer style, as well as on the text, you can see the changes happen immediately before pressing OK and finalizing that is the choice that you want for your gradient text. I'm going to click on one of the stops and I'm going to open up the color picker tool, and I'm going to choose a blue. This now changes the colors that are in the gradient, and I'm going to stick with this gradient overlay. If you see that you like the colors in your gradient but you'd rather have the pink on top, you simply click the reverse button. Instead of you having to open up your gradient style and moving the colors themselves, you can actually click on the reverse button. This is it for the first technique of gradient overlay. I am also going to show you a style design that you can do to the text where you can add a gradient overlay there also. Simply make sure your text is selected and go to stroke. Now, just to separate the two, I'm going to make this first stroke white. That way you can see the actual effects of the gradient outside of the text so that they don't blend together. And then I'm going to add a second stroke, and on that stroke right here where it says field type, instead of choosing a color, I am going to choose gradient. This pops up the gradient overlay, the screen that we just worked in for the text. I'm going to make it bigger, and then you can simply use your color picker tool to pick the colors of the gradient that are already on the screen. If you find that you like the gradient effect in your stroke instead of in your text, you can simply unselect the gradient overlay style, and now your text is back to the original color, which is black, and you have the gradient overlay for your text. You can do gradient overlays for text. You can do it for images if you wanted to layer an image. Now for the next style, I'm going to click on effects and drag it down to the trash can. This gives us the regular hey y'all that we started with in order to set our screen up for the second gradient effect technique. So now we're going to go down to the bottom of our layers panel and click the plus sign. This will give us a new layer. To the left hand side in our tools bar, we'll click our gradient tool. If you did not reset your workspace to Essentials default, this tool may be your paint bucket. Simply click the arrow and then you would change it from paint bucket back to gradient tool. I typically leave this as paint bucket, but for Essentials default, this is the gradient tool. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to choose a gradient color. You'll see at the top everything that would normally pop up in the gradient style with your angle, radial, reflected. All of that is now in your top toolbar instead of being in a separate screen that pops up. You'll also see that you have the same color choices when it comes to your gradients. All of those preset choices, literally everything that is in your gradient style overlay effects at the bottom is now at the top because of the gradient effects tool. So I'm going to select this color, click on my screen, and draw a line down in the direction that I want my gradient to go. This basically gives you a whole layer of the gradient effect. So the same way that we did in our glitter overlay, and I'll be sure to tag that video, you're going to go to layer and you will create a clipping mask. This puts the layer, the gradient layer, directly onto the text. Now remember, just like when we created a clipping mask with the glitter paper, wherever you move your text now is what part of the gradient will show up on your text. So unless you merge the two layers together and move them together, moving the text will essentially move where the gradient is on top of the text. But this is an easy way to move your not to move your text. This is an easy way to do the gradient effect that will cover the whole layer or cover the whole workspace. If you're wanting to change the text of your design, simply click on the eye that is beside the gradient layer, and once it is not visible, then you can double click your text layer and change it. And like the text says, that is all for this video. Please drop a comment down below and let me know which gradient text effect technique that you like best and which one you'll possibly be trying in the future. Please do not forget to comment, share, and subscribe. Remember that sharing is caring, and I'll see you on the next one.